Welcome to the class of 2023 kickoff. I am Roxana, and I am joined here by Jenny, who is actually jumping on from a little vacation in Hawaii. So glad to have her here. And together we are sort of your initial College Calm team and the two counselors that are currently working with the class of 2023. This is the first time we've actually done a mandatory meeting, and we are so happy that you're here because there's a lot of information just about College Calm and how to make the most out of your experience with us that we'd love to talk about. And we also have been doing a lot of diving into the numbers and trying to figure out what we've learned from this class of 2021. And we think that it's really important information to pass along to families. So our goals for tonight is one, just to help orient you to all the things that College Calm has to offer for your family and for your student. And then we're going to go sort of into the bigger picture and talk about some of the higher level things and what we're seeing in sort of the new and emerging college admissions landscape. So first off, one of the things that we work really hard at College Calm is getting you the information that you need. And there's a lot of different ways that we do that. And sometimes it's hard to know who's getting what, who's opening what, and what's happening. So I wanted to just lay out for you all of the different types of communication that you will get from us. So monthly, you will get a newsletter from us that has a lot of information about things that we think that you need to know. It'll have to-do lists. It'll have a lot of important information, and it gets sent out via something called MailChimp, and it comes from my address. So roxana@collegecalm.com. Now, when it goes out, sometimes if you have Gmail, it ends up in your promotions, right? Sometimes it'll end up in your spam. So what I did is I scheduled something to land in your inbox between 7:30 and 7:45 today. So please check to make sure, check your junk, put in College Calm, you can put in class of 2023, try to find that and just make sure that wherever it ended up, you get it to your inbox, okay? The other thing that we do, which I did tonight at 7 o'clock, is that we send texts from a dedicated line for College Calm. So it's not a text from me, it's not a text from Jenny, it's from a separate line. So we don't get responses. It's simply to let you know things that are happening and as reminders, because we know that a lot of times texts are easier. So we texted out the registration link for this webinar. We have an Instagram. We would love you if you followed us. We do put a lot of great information on the Instagram, and certainly whenever we create anything new like a blog or a video or a recorded webinar, we try to put a lot of that stuff up on Instagram. The other things that we will start doing as we start meeting is that we will be doing session summaries and also letting you know what your assignments are. So I was going to show you what that looks like. So a session summary comes as an email, and it's usually from myself or from Jenny, and it has parents and student on the email. Sometimes the functionality only allows us to do one parent. So we try to work on that, but essentially at least one parent and one student. We do everything from recapping what we talked about in the session. We put in the assignments that students are supposed to be doing. We want to update, right, and let you know what the student has been working on so that you guys can talk about it. I know sometimes it's hard to ask a teen like, hey, how'd the session go with Jenny? They're like, fine, right? If you want to know what happened, make sure you get these summaries and you read them. Also, I think it's a great conversation starter. If you know what your student did during that session, you can ask them, hey, it looks like you were working on college lists. Tell me a little bit about it. The other thing that we do is we keep all of our students' assignments in Google Docs. And we do this with the red triangle, and we call it assignments, and it has their name in it. This is a way for students to keep track of what they need to do for their next session. Now, If you are a student that sometimes has a hard time keeping track of the things they need to do, or if you are a parent and you know that you have a student that sometimes has a hard time figuring out, what they need to do and needs to, calendar things and set aside time, just share the document, right? Share the document with your parent. Parent asks to, and you will know. And we're usually pretty explicit about what we're asking of students. If there's something on there that a student just has no idea what we're talking about, just text or email us. We are happy to clarify, or even send us a note via Google Docs. So those are ways that we're helping students and families know where they are. So emails, students, if you have something you want to update us on, something happens with a class, or you found a great summer opportunity and you want to see what we think, just email us. You can also text us. Parents, if there's something going on at home that you think we should know, please email us. Texts typically are with students. And that's to let us know, hey, I need to change my appointment time, or hey, I was just thinking about this, what do you think? Students can do emails and texts. For parents, it's a little bit easier for us to respond in a meaningful way through emails. So I'm going to go back to the newsletters just for a second, because I spend a lot of time on the content for the newsletters. And what we include is essential information, updates that we think families need to know, details about resources if you want to learn more or want to know kind of what's behind some of the things that your students are doing. They have to-do lists so that on a monthly basis in general the types of things that students should be working on. And what I've added this year is recommended family discussion topics. Okay, so you will see in the newsletter that just landed in your box. And here's the deal, if you don't get this newsletter, email me and I will figure out what's going on and we'll make sure that you're going to get the newsletters. But there is a section that has family discussion topics. I'm not going to give it away in terms of what you're supposed to be talking about, but there's some things for kids to talk about and some things for parents to talk about. So this is just an idea of the types of things that are in the newsletters. Alert, SAT subject tests are dead, right? They're gone. This was a really happy day for me, I'm not gonna lie. I was very excited about this. However, right, that it went in the newsletter because that was the easiest way for us to get to the maximum number of students. We put things like opportunities for students to get involved in things, or we might put some ideas for summer programs. This one in particular is about a STEM writing contest that a student could do. We also put to-do lists, right? So one of our last ones for our seniors, right? These are the things they're supposed to be working on. Again, these are all double, triple checks. And to keep the students on top of things, right? Even though we're meeting one-on-one, actually the time that we meet, we're doing so many things that we can't always get to every piece. Like, oh yeah, I forgot to tell you, SAT subject tests are dead. And then we also put up other opportunities for students in terms of things that College Com is offering and how students can get involved. So in terms of offerings, these are the things in terms of what we do at College Com, the core of what we do. So we do one-on-one sessions with students. The majority of the folks who are here tonight are full-time students. That's 30 hours one-on-one. We do workshops, right? So we have been doing a workshop series. So anything from how to do your activities to building a college list. Those are open to all of our full-time students and they're free. We are not charging hours for those. It's simply more time for you to get the work done. And it has been working beautifully with the juniors who have chosen to do one-on-one sessions, but also to do some of the workshops. We also do webinars like this, but we do it on different topics. We have the Summer Synergy program. We've got a protected website with videos and checklists. And then we also do drop-in hours, sometimes for families, especially for first semester juniors. First semester junior year, we are slammed with the seniors. You're juniors, we're working with the seniors, but we want to make sure that you're getting your questions answered and that we're available. So we often do drop-in hours. So I'm going to jump out just to show you some stuff on our website really fast. Okay, so here's our website. In terms of our services, right, you can click on here. We do kind of keep an update of the workshops so that you can see them, but we also do some workshops that are not public, which is why you want to definitely make sure that you're looking at the newsletter to see what we're offering. On the front page, we have 2 great webinars coming up, and we would love for you to come and get more information. One is about young women in medicine. Jenny has put together an amazing panel of young women who are either at the end of medical school or in their early residency or their early careers as doctors that have all taken different paths to get their medical degree. They're going to talk about where they did their undergrad, what they did about medical school, and how they did it. Incredibly informative. And if you're not able to make it, we'll film it and we'll put it on the website. We also have the basics of college recruiting. Okay, if you go to the front page of our website, you can go, you can sign up. Jenny is going to do that one as well. She's a jack of all trades. She's going to be talking about just the beginnings of what you should do if you're an athlete at this time. And it's really geared towards the class of 2023. On the resources tab of our website, you can go back and see everything, right? You can, again, register for the ones that are coming up. You can go back and see all of the different things that we've put together. Letters of recommendation, what does it mean to have a balanced list, right? Now, recorded webinar, everything you know about the SAT and SAT2 subject exams, I'm just gonna say don't watch that one, all right? We're in a whole new ball game that I will talk about in a minute, but that one we're probably going to take down very soon. The myth of fit and college research, there's a gazillion things on here. Things about summer, things about what your real GPA is. And sometimes what we'll do for students is we'll actually assign as their homework to watch one of these webinars so that they can come prepared for their meeting. There's also the blog. So the blog right now has great write-ups on different students and their synergy projects. I highly recommend, if that's something that you might be interested in, that you check those out. And then it's where we put basic stuff, okay? Stuff that goes out to the public versus the newsletter that goes just to our clients. But there's a lot of good things on there. And then you have a current students tab, which could just as easily say current families. And what you get on this page is this is where you can go to schedule an appointment anytime. So if you're ever lost and you're like, I don't know where to schedule the appointment, right? Click on here, it will get you to the schedule. Just make sure you choose the right counselor. All of you this summer will be introduced to College Planner Pro, which is kind of our content management system. And this is how you can get into College Planner Pro really easily once you create your password. And then we have member-only resources. This is where I think families are going to start to go, there's so much information. We are not suggesting that you access all of this information now, or maybe even ever. But when you have a question and you want sort of that bigger picture of how do things fit in, or what should I be doing and how does this look, this is the place to go. Now, I was logged into this with a password, and it is password protected. So in the newsletter that landed while I've been talking, the password is in there. So that's how you get in. And if you have any trouble with that, again, just text or email us. So here's what's on here. It's basically some of the most amazing organizational things Jenny and I have ever done. There is videos of our past students talking about different things like what did they get involved in? How did they stay organized? What did they do over their summers? How did you get involved in the community? How do you deal with stress of high school? What advice would you give younger students? And what did you write your personal statement about? And what did you take senior year? So we have videos of our students answering these questions. And I just think it's an amazing resource for particularly sophomores to just say, hey, okay, this person went to Cal Poly, like, let's just figure out what they were doing. We will be updating these. And I think a lot of the new videos are going to be, how did you research colleges, right? How did you decide which college you're going to go to? And some of the things that are slightly more pandemic specific. There's also a ton of resources. We'll go through those in a minute. I just want to point out the communications tab because I think this is really important. If you don't think you're getting all the newsletters, or let's just say checking them when they come in is not your thing, that's fine. You can always come here, and if you click on newsletter, okay, it gives you everything that we've sent out from our account. So you can look at anything. You can look at things going to the juniors. You can look at, all sorts of things. So this is the one that just went out. If I click on it, it actually gives me what got sent. Okay, we got some stuff on Synergy. If you are interested in Synergy, it is a fantastic program. It helps students kind of really dive into their interests, and they work with a coach to build a project to do over the summer that's related to their academic interests. We think it's fantastic. And as I was listening to all of these admissions folks this week and how important it is that students demonstrate doing something, right? Both inside and outside of the classroom related to their interests, Synergy is just right on target. There's a special thing here. If you are a full-time package student, you can add the Student Synergy project on for $500 versus typically it's $650. And I would just say, if that's something that you're interested in, you can go back and check out under services. There's a ton of information on the Summer Synergy project on the website. And also on this, this video is one of our current juniors, almost seniors, who did this Synergy project last summer. And she talks about sort of the stages of her project and how she got from beginning to end. So those are really great things that you can look at. Again, I know it's kind of information overload. It's more that we just need to make sure that you know that it's here. The other thing is there are a ton of documents and checklists. And if you want to, research majors, there's a whole list of places to go to that. And that's all on the protected page. All right. So let's talk timeline. All right. We are just kicking you off into the college process. We will be sending you pre-work via email. So some things that you need to do and to gather and things like that before you have your first session. Our expectation is that we will do 2 one-on-one appointments this summer for an hour and a half each. And you want to put some space between them in terms of how you set it out. And we really don't expect you to come in before school's out. This can be a very hectic time of year, and especially because folks have just gotten back to campus and their sports and all that, like, we are easing back in. So unless you're going on college visits June 6th and you want to know what you might want to see, then you can backload it, right? You can come in May, absolutely, no problem, right? The issue right now is that Jenny and I haven't set our summer schedule, but the summer schedule will be set hopefully by May 1st. So if you go in right now, it's kind of a gamble because I have no idea what my schedule looks like in June. You can do it. It's just we may have to finagle. I may have to move you and things like that. So if you can wait until May 1st, that would be super helpful. If you want to make an appointment in May, May is set up correctly. So you can go ahead and do that. And that's sort of up to what you want to talk about. And we have the things that we want to talk about. But if there's certain things that are time sensitive, then you got to jump right in. One of the things that's really important to note is, like I said, in the fall, you have your junior year. By the time you get there, and some of the things that we'll talk about this summer is, are you going to take the SAT or the ACT? When are you going to take it? We'll talk a lot about sort of, your grades and your activities and all the different things that you have going on. Your first semester junior year is really for you to get a feel for what junior year feels like and to adjust accordingly. I can tell you you will have way less time in the fall than you have right now and have had for the last year. So it could be a little bit of a rough adjustment, right? Going back to school, having a certain number of periods, having IB classes, AP classes, plus sports, plus activities, all of these things going on. And it's not to say you can't handle it. You totally can. It's just that we want you to spend your time on testing if you're going to be doing it, and on adjusting and really figuring out how you can do the best you can in your classes. You don't need to come and see us. And we are frazzled with the seniors. Again, if something comes up, if you are taking a class and you're in way over your head and you want to talk to us about it, email us, no problem. We are incredibly responsive. We just don't set aside meeting time because we meet every week with every senior. So let us know, we're happy to help, but the expectation is that we will not see you for a scheduled meeting until potentially December. But I promise you'll have plenty of other things to do. So essentially, one of the things on the protected page is this Gantt chart. And the Gantt chart, we have one for sophomore year through the beginning of junior year. And then we have one Gantt chart that starts the second half of junior year and goes through the end of the process. This can be a little overwhelming thing to look at. What I really wanted to show on this is that I was just going to go to summer so that you know kind of what our goals are this summer in those meetings. Okay, we're going to ask for a transcript and we'll tell you how to get it, and it's usually pretty easy. We just we want to see that and have that information from the end of sophomore year. From the testing standpoint, we're going to discuss, right? And this will come a little bit later in the presentation, but we will discuss SAT, ACT, no, wait, hurry. Testing is a very personal thing. We can give guidelines, but ultimately we need to talk to students and really think about, the best path forward, and parents need to be part of that discussion as well. The other thing is there's a lot of families think they have to take the SAT. You don't. You can take the ACT. And what we're going to talk to students about over the summer is how to decide which tests they like better. And that will involve taking a practice test. And so that's one of the things that we will be prompting students to do, is to schedule a practice test. They're free at multiple different places. Again, you'll get a newsletter that has the list of places to go. And that will kind of help you decide. It will also give you a baseline. From an activities perspective, we're going to review what you're doing and have you write it down. We're going to talk to you about community engagement. We're going to have you complete the beginning of an activity log. And if we have time, we're going to create a resume that you can build on, right? But it's different for every student. Some students will get through all of it. Some students we won't. It's okay. We will get to it eventually. We have a long road ahead of us. I mean, a super fun, but long road. Here's a fun one. Summer, read a book that's not assigned. Just a thought, it comes up a lot in applications. They'll have you talk about a book that you read for pleasure. And it's very clear to us that most students don't read for pleasure. So just if you want to get a leg up on that one, and read something that's interesting to you, right? Don't go choose some tome about economics if you really could care less, right? If you're into fantasy, read fantasy. It doesn't matter what you read. It's simply that you do it for enjoyment, right? Not to write a paper or anything like that. From the college investigation standpoint, right, we're going to start to have you determine your initial college values, and we have a lot of exercises for you to do that. We are going to talk to you or have you watch a short little video we've created on understanding the different types of colleges. We're going to have you investigate 10 to 20 colleges. Usually students get to about 20 colleges over the summer. And then you know what? That's a fall assignment. Do 10 more. If you're super smart and organized, you'll do one a week. It'll be super easy. Right? So that's why Continue Investigating College continues on. Majors and aptitudes. We're going to take some surveys this summer. We're going to talk about different majors and just kind of open your eyes to all of the opportunities out there so that you can just start to learn more about what's out there. we're also going to pull out the UC Insight questions so that you have an idea of what the UC campuses are asking students to fill out. And the idea is you can kind of look at it and say, oh, okay, yeah, I've totally got 2 of those questions under control. You have to answer 4 of 8. But it's really just for your edification so that you have an idea of what's coming. That's a lot of what College Comm does, is help you kind of look through things that are coming so that when they actually arrive, you are neither surprised nor unprepared. You'll be super prepared. And from a writing standpoint, we usually have you write about something, just to have a writing sample about how you write and how you write about yourself. So that's sort of the idea of what's covered in the summer between pre-work, sessions, some video things that we'll have you do, and then sort of going into your junior year. All right. So what I want you to take away from this first part of this presentation is that we're working really hard to try to get you the information that you need. And I think a lot of families feel really stressed when they don't know what's going on. So just really encourage you to engage with the material that we send. Please open emails if you see them. I don't care if it's, 2 days late, 2 weeks late. But if you look at it, at least you'll have a sense of what's going on and you're not going to miss anything. The other thing, just a side note, in case you were curious, we can see who doesn't open them, who it's been delivered to and who doesn't open it. We can also see who opens it and who clicks on stuff. That's just part of the software that we use. So if we see that, you're not, if we're three months in and you haven't opened anything, we will likely be in touch. But I hope we don't have to do that because it's kind of a big waste of our time. Hopefully after tonight, you can just make sure that everybody's getting the information. The other thing is, students, these resources are totally useless unless you access them, right? And again, we're not saying access them constantly, but if there's a certain thing you're curious about, it's a really good place to start. Or you ask us and we will point you, hey, you know what? On the protected site, you can go look at this. I think Jenny and I are very proud of how much information we have been able to distill down for families in really easily digestible pieces. And it's something that's really important to us. This is, we are all part of a village right now that's going to help your student go through the college process. And it's really important that parents are engaged, right? The level of engagement definitely depends on your family, your student, and a whole lot of other things, of course. But it's all of us together. And there's a lot of things in this process that parents do need to weigh in on. Like if a student says, I don't want to take the SAT or the ACT, I think everybody kind of needs to weigh in and go pros, cons on that. College list, right? Things like that. So it's just really important, and we welcome questions, comments, and the like. Oh man, okay, switching gears. I'm hoping this is not going to be like the dark, crazy, anxiety-producing information. So here's the 6 things we've learned so far from the class of 2021, right? We have so much information to glean in the next 3 months as we get more information on wait lists and ultimately where students are going and that kind of stuff. So we are sort of midway through in our information gathering. So we're doing the best we can. Okay, testing is going to continue to be confusing and complicated. The UC system is now more unpredictable than ever. Merit aid, total bright spot. There's tons of money out there. A balanced list is a requirement to go through the college application process. Social justice, inclusion, diversity, and service are super important topics and concepts at universities. And different pathways to schools are going to continue to emerge in sort of this new landscape of admissions. So I'm going to go through and talk briefly about each one. Again, this is some of the higher level stuff that's kind of important. So the testing landscape is just more complicated. When the pandemic hit, everybody ended up going test optional, okay? And students got a lot of leeway on whether to submit scores or not. But what's important to note is that schools have different levels of test optional, right? There's a small group of schools that are test blind, meaning if you send it, they will not look at it. There's a group of schools that have been test optional for years, right? So the transition during the pandemic was not a big deal. They were ready. They already had probably 40% of their applicants that did not submit test scores. There was another group of schools that was ready for test optional, meaning they wanted to try it and they knew they wanted to try it, and the pandemic pushed them into it. And then there's just a really giant category that was like, ah, right? And they are reluctantly test optional. They had to do it for equity issues, and kids could not get tests, and it was the right thing to do. Those universities are just not yet decided if it's the right thing going forward. So when we look at these types of schools, it's just helpful to know test blind, UC and Cal State system this year. University of San Diego did it too, and so did University of Washington as a pilot, which meant if you got a perfect SAT score, they did not see it. They would not see it. All of that was suppressed on their application. So schools that were previously test optional, right, that just kind of slid into this, places like Wake Forest, Colorado College, Denison University, Franklin and Marshall. A lot of liberal arts colleges were really doing a lot of test optional because they do not believe that the standardized tests are showing them anything about their students on campus. All right, ready for test optional. Universities that were headed in that direction, and they got a little bit of a push. Indiana University was going to pilot it this coming year. Oregon State was also going to pilot it, and University of Redlands. All right, reluctantly test optional, everybody else, right? The way it is looking, and again, this information is changing daily, is that most schools have committed to test optional for the class of 2022, all right? You are the class of 2023. We do not know yet. Some schools have been great, and they have said, oh, well, you know what, 22 and 23, we're gonna keep it all test optional. There's a lot to come out, and it's also a really complicated issue. I listened to multiple webinars in the last 2 days at our sort of national counseling conference, listening to admissions officers, and some of the things are like, you know, some of the bigger public schools, it's going to be a little bit harder for them not to have test scores. So they may go back to requiring them. Also schools in the South, right? So schools in the South, oftentimes their testing, their need for standardized tests is actually part of their education code, right? So they have to make amendments in order to go test optional, and they may decide not to do that. They also have a ton of scholarships that are funded by the lottery. And with that money, right, and how it was described to be paid out, test scores was a part of how to figure out who gets that money, okay? Those are some of the complicated issues going forward. So we will continue to keep you updated in terms of what we think will happen. UCs, your class, 2023, test blind, okay? There is a court order for them not to use the ACT or the SAT data. And so they have committed to that. And until that lawsuit gets settled, they will be test blind. All right, here's our recommendations. And please know every recommendation that I put in here, I also put in the newsletter that landed in your email. Take a practice SAT, ACT over the summer. Check to see what your baseline is on your score, to just see like, okay, how does that look compared to some averages I see from some of the schools that I'm interested in? If you're an athlete, I would probably try to take the test and be prepared to do so. It is a lot easier for a coach to advocate for a student if they have a strong SAT or ACT score. Ultimately, the class of 2023 will be able to connect with coaches. It depends on the sport in terms of when it is, but potentially in the fall. It's a question you can also ask coaches. They'll be very straightforward. They will also be straightforward in what kind of scores they need. If you're a strong test taker, if that's something that you have always been good at, I'd probably take the test, right? Because what it's an opportunity to show a strength. On the flip side, if you are a terrible test taker and your tests never measure up to how well you do in your classes, take the practice and then let's have a conversation. Students can spend a ridiculous amount of time preparing for these tests. We want to make sure that the preparation is worth it and important in the end. And that is still unfolding a little bit. So with your class, I would just say, like, hang tight and talk to us about your specific situation. Okay, so test blind made the UCs really hard this year, as did the more applications. They were up almost 30% in terms of applications. There were less acceptances, there were more wait lists. The interesting news that we got from the conference is that as of this moment in time, as of yesterday, I suppose, the UCs had less deposits from in-state students than they did the year before. So we don't know. There's a lot of people that might just be waiting to put their deposit down. But what it might mean is that all those kids that got the wait list, some of them are going to start to get, to get off those wait lists. This is a tough pill to swallow. And we know that. But there's some things that we definitely want families to think about when thinking about sort of the UC system. One, keep an open mind. This is going to come up a few times in the next 5 minutes, but keeping an open mind just in terms of what schools, in-state, out-of-state, all of that kind of stuff. Researching out-of-state public schools, right? So what's happening is the UC system's feeling this crunch, and where great California candidates are getting in? Washington, right? They're getting into Oregon, they're getting into Arizona, they're getting into Michigan, right? There's a lot of other out-of-state public institutions that students can look at. Consider private schools with strong merit aid. The private schools in California, not the uber selective ones, AKA Stanford, there will be no scholarships unless you qualify for need-based financial aid. USC, not a ton of money going out in merit, but Chapman, LMU, and a lot of other schools are giving very generous packages that is making private schools a lot, just less expensive. And we see that, you'll see in a moment, a lot of schools in the Pacific Northwest. Spend some time determining your college values. And this should not be, my college value is, I want to go to Harvard, right? What we're going to press you on this summer is to really think about what's important to you and what you want out of your college experience. And Jenny and I are going to work relentlessly to find you schools to research that we think match your criteria. There are a gazillion schools out there. You just need to spend a little bit more time researching, because we can't just say, oh, well, you know what? They'll get in to the UCs and then that'll be fine. Remember that this process is about you, not anyone else. You should not be applying to colleges because your friends apply to those colleges, right? You should be spending the time figuring out what works for you. I'm going to take a little side note here. The other thing I think was really good to do early on when you're thinking about selectivity of schools and where do I sit and what's going on is for you to go find your school profile. Okay, so here's how you do it. You simply put the name of the school, high school profile into Google, okay? And I'm just going to pull up Sequoia's. It usually comes up as a PDF. And I just am going to show you what's on here. And I encourage every family to Google and find their school profile. If it's not on the web, ask your college counselor. Okay, this is what goes with your transcript to colleges. So this is the information that colleges get about your school. So you should know what's on there. Demographic information, graduation requirements, types of classes offered, the segment in terms of the GPA, which we'll go into in a second, how many students and what types of schools they're going to, right? This has percentage of IB things, other types of testing, and contact information, okay? So essentially, I pulled just the GPA data because Jenny and I just decided it was a good thing for people to be looking at. When you pull that profile, I think it's important to look at the GPA data and recognize that every school is different with GPA. So when you hear that someone had a 4.3 and they didn't get into UC Davis, right? There's a difference between the 4.3 at one school. At another school, it might have been a 3.9. Okay, so what you see on the left is the distribution of grades at Sequoia, and on the far left is by weighted GPA and then by unweighted GPA. And what I want families to look at is just to kind of get a sense of what the distribution is. Because I had students, I had families, that say, well, why didn't my student get in to UC Santa Barbara or UCLA? And we have to explain that the UC system is really only supposed to capture the top 9 to 12% of students system-wide. That is from Merced all the way up to Berkeley and UCLA. Okay, that is what is mandated by the state. So when you look at these numbers, right, and so you look at, okay, at Sequoia, there are 22 students that have a 4.0 and above, and this is the 2020 grade distribution. That means they have perfect grades. If it is unweighted, that is perfect grades in every class that they took. That's an A, right? Then it's like, okay, the next 30 group might have a B. And what you've got is, let's see, 52 kids. And so we're looking at sort of 4.0 to 4.2 or 4.46, right? And those might be the only kids that get into any of the UCs. Okay. And it's interesting to compare, and I am by no means saying one is better than the other, but on the right is Palo Alto High School, right? And this is just unweighted, and this is actually the class of 2021, which is slightly skewed, right? Just because they probably had some grades that were pass, no pass, as did 2020 over here, but potentially more over here. And you look at the grade distribution, right? And they do theirs differently. So they only have essentially 5 categories versus Sequoia has 10. But there's 256 kids that have between a 3.75 to a 4.0 unweighted GPA, right? So they're not counting any 5-point classes. And then this last one is Sacred Heart, right? So I just wanted you to see what it looks like at a private school, right? And in terms of where the grades go, right? So you were looking at Sequoia, which had a high of a 4.46, right? Whereas you have one student in the class of 2021 from Sacred Heart that has a 4.2. The major difference there is they weight things differently, and they weight different classes differently. And so this just gives you an idea. And again, everyone should do this just for their own edification of their own school, to know what's out there. Okay. Shining moment. Merit Aid was super strong for local students. When we initially did this, the class of 2021 had received $2.8 million in scholarships over 4 years. We have not, Jenny and I have actually not gotten all the information from all seniors. We still have probably about 15 to go. And what you see here is we're now up over $4 million in Merit Aid for mostly San Carlos, Redwood City, Menlo Park, Portola Valley, San Mateo students. This is not money that is related to how much money your family makes. This is Merit Aid. It's based on the strength of your application. And Merit Aid is going to students across the board. I have kids with a 3.6 who got Merit Aid, 3.3 that got Merit Aid, along with students in that 4.1 category that got a lot of Merit Aid, right? So we just wanted to put some of the schools up here that are giving really generous Merit Aid to students. And they did not have to apply for this money. They got this money simply because of their application. So they had to do nothing extra. Chapman came in great. Redlands, Baylor, Denver, Lewis and Clark, Puget Sound, Oregon, Gonzaga, like some amazing schools. And students got a ton of resources. So our recommendation, this right now as a sophomore, going into a junior, is time you need to start talking about the cost of college. And it should not be a closed discussion. It should be a pretty open discussion. What does a private school cost? What does a UC cost? What does a Cal State cost? What does University of Washington cost, right? It's time to start to look around, and don't look at it for 1 year. Look at it how much it's going to cost over 4 years. Get to know colleges where you are at or above their median GPA and test scores. Now, the test scores piece, who knows, right? But in terms of your GPA, right, schools you are overqualified for, meaning that your GPA is above their average, right, is where you're most likely going to get Merit Aid. okay? Again, look at the cost over the 4 years and do a net price calculator. Just do one. Do one that's more specific. There's a really basic one that comes from the federal government that's not so great, but some of the private schools have a much better one to look at. And you plug in like your 2020 tax stuff, and it will tell you if you're eligible for need-based aid or what is your expected family contribution, right? And if your expected family contribution is above the cost of the college, you get no need-based aid. You only get merit aid. This stuff is really complicated. We're going to go into financial aid, a lot of different ways over time. There'll be webinars and all kinds of stuff so that you guys can do that. There's also great information at high schools. All right, I'm going to try to finish this up in 5 minutes. A balanced list is essential. Okay, we have a program where we put students' information in and the colleges that they're interested in, and it spits out what's on the left, right? Unlikelies, reaches, targets, likelies. And what we decided this year is that we would go the extra mile in taking the data from our students and going back and looking at the program to see, okay, what happened with the different categories. Again, we still have 15, maybe 20 students to get this information from, but here's the trend so far. Our students got into 100% of their safeties. They got into 62% of their targets. A target is considered like a 50-50, right? So they did better than that. I actually think the target's going to move up. Reaches, right, which could be anything. You can be a 4.5 student with a 1560 on the SAT, and Stanford's a reach. Anything that has below a 15% acceptance rate is always going to be a reach. Private uber selective schools were harsh this year. Okay. We don't know, again, what's going to happen with the wait list and things like that. But essentially, students got into about 30% of their reach schools. And I would say many of them got into 0. And then a few of them got into 2 or 100% of those. The unlikelies, nobody got into their unlikelies. So as we start building your list, we use this tool so that we can have a conversation about, and here's the deal. Sometimes these conversations are rough. They're rough for you, they're rough for us. But I do want to just reiterate that we are here to relentlessly find schools in situations where you are going to be both happy and successful. And we, having done this for many years, and collectively, the two of us, like almost 30 years, there are so many colleges out there where you will be happy and successful. That I can guarantee. Okay, I recommend time. Put time into researching colleges. Think about fit in different ways, right? There's academic fits, there's social fits, and economic fits. And let me tell you, there's some students where the academic fit and the social fit are not what you would think, right? So maybe you have a kid that has really, really good grades, but socially they're like, I do not want to be with a whole bunch of people who are type A and gunning for it all the time. I'm tired and burned out from high school. Okay, there are places for those folks, right? And that's what Jenny and I are here for. Get comfortable with your safeties and your targets. I'd say that's the number one thing. I think families spend a lot of time looking at the reaches, which I think is important if you're going to do early decision, if you want to have sort of that one that you're going to apply to that's binding. It's not that that research isn't important. It's just that it cannot be at the expense of other things. If you go to Boston and you want to see Harvard and MIT, well, then go see Tufts and Northeastern or Boston University, right? Make sure that you're covering your bases that way. Consider limiting your number of unlikelies and reaches. The reason I say that is what happened this year, and one of the reasons that applications were up across the board, is that students applied to more schools this year because they thought, what the heck, it's test optional, anything can happen, right? And I think everybody was really optimistic. And what happened is it was not pretty. So a kid that might have applied to 6 or 7 reaches when normally we would have said 3 or 4 might have ended up in 1 week getting 6 no's on the emails. So when we're putting together the lists, right, and thinking about the schools that students are applying to, we also want to think about what happens after those applications are in. It's not a great feeling to get 7 no's in a week, right? And in general, it did not help to apply to more schools, right? The other thing is to be true to yourself. I think we get really caught up in what people think is the right school or the best school or what everybody else is doing. And Jenny and I it's so important to us to get to know our students so that we can help you be you. Not the next kid, not the other kid on our caseload that goes to your school. We are here to really develop you as an individual and to treat you as such and to talk about what gifts you bring to the world. And that's really important to us. So don't think we're creepy or anything. We really just want to support you. Okay, I'm going to blow through this pretty fast. Colleges care about all of these things and they ask them in their essay questions. Okay, so Princeton, they're asking, share a time when you had a conversation with a group of people about a difficult topic. What insight did you gain? How would you incorporate that knowledge into your future? Right? University of Oregon, describe an experience with discrimination, whether it was fighting against it or recognizing contributing to discriminating against a person or group. University of San Diego, what contribution have you made to your high school or local community that best exemplifies your awareness of and commitment to creating a diverse and equitable community? And Michigan always asks about, tell us about a community that you belong to and what's your role. So what do we suggest? And why are we telling you this now? One, so you can see the questions are hard, right? And also to know the questions are a lot easier if you've gotten involved in the community in some way. So our recommendation is get involved in the community. Right? What feels comfortable for you? It can be virtual. And part of that is figuring out, what do you care about? Do you care about food waste? Do you care about homeless kids? Do you care about politics? Like, how can you volunteer and get involved in the community in something that you already feel passionate about? I'm going to retract that. I hate the word passion. I try not to use it. Like what you feel interested or strongly about, right? What you might want to debate with someone. Participate in the diversity around you. A lot of you go to big, diverse public schools, but you can get out of that school without having to participate in a heck of a lot of diversity. So take advantage of getting involved and getting to know people who are different from you. Determine what you care about and take some steps to learn more. And think about what communities you're a part of and the ones you might want to join. Okay, we are here to give you lots of ideas in all of these categories. And we're here to help if you're at a standstill, right? And you don't really know which direction to go. But I think if every student kind of sits back and thinks, there's something you care about, right? And so our job is to figure out how to translate that into something that you can actually do. Ooh, so this is really high level. And the idea is that college admissions is changing. And that the more flexible students can be about how they might be attending college, the better. So what we've seen things in the past, like you've been admitted to USC for second semester, right? So you got to go do something else first semester, but you can join second semester. There has been a lot this year of go abroad the first year on our program, in England, Australia, or wherever, and then come to our university as a sophomore. There are going to be increasingly different ways for you to get to the school that you want to go to. So if you have your heart set on NYU, what we want students to think about and families right now is there might be you might end up with an interesting situation where you might need to go to, NYU on a different campus for a semester. We're simply asking you to be open-minded and think of the long game, right? This other thing was from one of the workshops that we were in, and it was from USC admissions. It says, and this was talking about taking tests out. The part, to me, is where test optional is really exciting. We kind of cut off a safety net in a sense. We are now really counting on a human decision rather than a formulaic process. I think that will mean a more exciting class. And you know what else it's going to mean? A lot more unknowns for all of us, right? If there was a black box in admissions, and I've worked in admissions, I was inside the black box. Let me tell you, the box just got bigger, right? Without testing. Testing was one of the very quantifiable parts of this process. And if it continues to not be a factor, they're going to rely on other things more. So that will be courses, transcripts, how you've gone with your interest inside and outside of the classroom, recommendations. You know, there's plenty of things for them to draw on to get a sense of who you are and how you might fit into the community at their school. So here we go, the big message. Be flexible and open-minded as we go forward. I can say that's the number one piece of advice, to stay calm during this process. Now, that is not easy for all of us, yours truly. So we have to work at it. And a lot of what we're going to do in our sessions is working on, you know, being flexible and open-minded and having students research a lot of different things to kind of get closer to what they think is a good fit on different levels. I would urge parents to try to refrain from, at the beginning, if your student comes and says, oh, you know, I'm looking at University of San Diego, to insert, oh, my friend went there, it was a terrible experience, right? Or there's no way you can go to the University of Arizona. It's not to say that you can't think it, that's totally fine, but give them an opportunity. Instead of saying like, oh, why do they have you researching that? Flip the question and say, hey, what have you learned about it? Why might it be interesting to you? Because again, we're all going to have to be slightly more open-minded as we go through this new phase of sort of unknown. Here's the deal. Thoughtfully going through this process, I would say, takes 60 to 100 hours. The package is 30 hours. So guess what, kids? You have to do the work in between. And the more work you do in between our sessions and the more you keep on top of the things that we're asking you to do, the smoother you're going to go through this process. Do your work ahead of time. If you don't know what to do, text us, email us. Our job is to give you ideas and structure. Your job is to make some choices and do the work. Communicate with us, and that's to parents too. Like if your kid is struggling at school and they don't want to tell us, it's not comfortable for them to tell us, please feel free to pick up the phone and give us a call, or email us and just say, can we have a quick call? Or if something happens with your family that you think, the more we know, the better. We are here to support students to have a calm and, you know, positive experience through the college process. And I think as we're getting the, you know, we do surveys every year. And even though this was a crazy, crazy year, all of our kids have great options and all of them are relatively happy. And all of it made it through the process seemingly much easier than their friends. All right. It's a little Oprah, couldn't help myself. We're here, everybody together. This is the village, and we are really, really excited to be a part of your village. So thank you. I think, Jenny, if you want to unmute, if there's any big questions, but I wanted to let people who need to go from a time perspective. If you need to run, this is a time you can log off. And I'm going to stay, and Jenny and I will answer some of the questions that went into the chat.
There aren't really any questions in the chat at this point.
Okay.
But I'm going to stop recording. Is that okay?